Hi, I'm glad you stopped by. In looking at the counterfeit spirit of prophecy, there are some very important things to keep in mind, in which we have covered several of those earlier. But you have to know the truth if you're going to discover the counterfeit spirit of prophecy. And when you have a book that you're studying, it's good to keep this in mind. It's John chapter 8 and verse 32. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And that's what separates the counterfeit from the authentic, because the authentic spirit of prophecy is from God and not man. But man has created the counterfeit. When you are reading a confirmed, original, authentic spirit of prophecy book, all of a sudden you've come across something that just is not right. It just doesn't sit well. It shakes you. And you have to be aware that there is someone at the promptings of Satan who made a change. And we have just such a case that we're going to show you immediately. This is Spiritual Gifts, Volume 2. And we're going to be looking at page 98. Here is Volume 2 of Spiritual Gifts. And this is exactly where we are. And it has this to say: Brother Arnold held that the 1,000 years of Revelation 20 were in the past, and that the 144,000 were those raised at Christ's resurrection. And as we had the emblem of our dying Lord before us, and was about to commemorate his sufferings, Brother A arose and said he had no faith in what we were about to do, that the sacrament was a continuation of the Passover to be observed but once a year. This is wholly wrong, this word sacrament. This is wholly a Catholic term and a Catholic created name for, as Christians, we call it the Lord's Supper. Now, this book was published in 1860. Willie White was only about 6 years old. He's about 6 years old. And so Willie didn't have anything to do with this. But Uriah Smith was the editor, the big master editor, because he'd been to college and everybody looked up to him. Well, what happened here? James White corrected this several years later. This is the 1880 Life Sketches, page 248. Right here it is. Zoom in on it here so you can see it really well. Brother A arose and said he had no faith in what we were about to do, that the Lord's Supper was a continuation of the Passover to be observed but once a year. James White corrected that term because we don't use Catholic language to describe what Christians are doing. Okay, so from that, we're going to go straight into taking a look at the Great Controversy. Right here we have the 1884 Great Controversy, and we have this, which is the lie of Satan. The graves are open, and many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. That's Daniel 12:2, quoted as the stage for this. All who have died in faith under the third angel's message come forth from the tomb glorified to hear God's covenant of peace with those who have kept his law. They also which pierced him meaning those that crucified him, those that mocked and derided Christ's dying agonies, and the most violent opposers of his truth and his people are raised to behold him in his glory and to see the honor placed upon the loyal and obedient. This is the lie of Satan. So that's the 84 Great Controversy. Here it is in the 1911 Great Controversy on the right of your screen. And it reads almost exactly the same. So, what is this all about? How do you know that it is a lie? Well, we have proof. This right here is the present truth. And this is the paper that James White published, which was just before the name was changed to the Review. The Review and Advent Review. I think it was just called the Advent Review. Okay. So that's where that was. And then we're going to zoom in here and read this. This I saw was the work of the saints with Jesus in the holy city before it descends to the earth through the 1,000 years. Then, at the close of the 1,000 years, Jesus and the angels and all the saints with him leaves the holy city, and while he is descending to the earth with them, the wicked dead are raised, and then. Notice that this word then is all in caps. Says, and then the very men that pierced him, being raised, will see him afar off in all of his glory, the angels and saints with him, and will wail because of him. They will see the prints of the nails in his hands, and so forth. And you can read this when you get a chance. But that word then, what is it indicating? It is indicating a point of time. Then, it is a point in time. When is it? This is at the third coming. Well, where's all the clouds? Those clouds are clouds of angels. The apostles' eyes were blinded, and they could not see all the glory of the angels. It was hidden by clouds, and that was how God helped them. And he's coming with clouds again, but we are going to be strengthened by the outpouring of the Holy Spirit to help us, strengthen us, and prepare us physically to be able to endure the sight of all this glory, which is going to kill all the rest of the wicked. Now, this was not the only time that this was published. This is Present Truth number 11, page 86. It was published a second time in 1851, Christian Experience and Views, page 34, and it reads exactly the same. And that's what you want. So, where does this come from? Where did this idea come from if God had already straightened everything out? Uriah Smith is my understanding of it. He wrote this book, Thoughts Critical and Practical, on the Book of Revelation. And it's published 1865, right there. So you go in here to page 19, and he's talking about Daniel 12:2. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Here is a partial resurrection that is brought to view, or a resurrection of a certain class of each, righteous and wicked, before the general resurrection of either class. Now, Uriah Smith is not believing not believing the vision that God gave to the church through Ellen. Why is he not believing this? Well, he's blinded somehow. And if you get this book, Thoughts Critical and Practical, you will, all right, let's get this. There we go. You can read in there his reasonings, but his reasonings are inspired by Satan. That is not the way we are to reason. And we are to accept what God has given us. He did not accept it. This was published in 1865. 3 years later, he wrote a book entitled The Visions of Mrs. E.G. White, in which he is defending the visions, but not this vision. In Present Truth, number 11, page 86, he doesn't defend this vision because it cuts across his path. All of his books, you can pick up I shouldn't say all of his books, but many of his books, wherever he's talking about the second coming and he gets a chance, he puts it in there. You can find it in Daniel and Revelation. It's in the appendix at least. And he's got this in there. So I think Uriah Smith was colluding with Willie. I think he was a counselor and a mentor to Willie as Willie took over the rewriting of all the spirit of prophecy upon James White's death. And there you have it. You can make your own decision. God bless your study.